Let's discuss becoming a personal trainer. Welcome to another episode of the KIPS Podcast with Dr. Jan Schroder of CSU Long Beach and a fitness industry veteran. We're going to get to that episode in just a bit. I'm your host, Tyler Valencia, and in this episode, we're going to be talking about the realities of being a personal trainer, how to become a personal trainer, and some of those steps that have evolved over the years. Talking about education, talking about things that personal trainers don't really expect when entering the fitness industry. Before we get to the episode, there's one item that's mentioned in this episode, but I really want to hammer it home as it's really key in my opinion. That is empathy. There's a lot of episodes that I've done on this channel that have to do about the skills, but also the realities of being a personal trainer. And in my opinion, the interpersonal skills really help with that consultation, with showing that your services are more than just showing up and going through a program routine. Showing empathy with your clients is really a way to create connection, because think about it. That client or potential client that's standing or sitting across from you, they most likely don't like exercise. That's a really big thing to think about in these days. They don't like exercise. They've hired you to help them with programming to be efficient, but also they know they need someone to push them. So realize all these barriers that took them just to get there, because you yourself, as a fit pro, you most likely you enjoy it. You really look forward to that next session, and you are an outlier. This topic is going to be discussed more by Dr. Jan Schroder in this episode when she starts talking about the realities, the interpersonal skills that are required for this profession. Let's not waste any more time and let's get to the episode. On the KIPS podcast, we have somebody that means a lot to me and my undergraduate education. So I'm very jazzed that we have a great topic for you listeners today. We have Dr. Jan Schroder. She has been a pioneer in the industry and somebody that meant a lot in my undergraduate education. As I've mentioned, Dr. Schroder, can you talk a little bit about yourself, as much as you want, I will say? How did you get into the industry, what you've been doing, and what you're doing now?
Yeah. It's really, I think I took a path that a lot of people take, in that when I started my undergrad degree a very, very long time ago, I wanted to be a physical therapist because that's all I knew. And so, my senior year of high school, I started volunteering at the hospital. Mm-hmm. And honestly, Tyler, I didn't like it. Yeah. The therapists there were kind of bitter, that they were, they said, this doctor is telling me to do this when I really should be doing this. And so it kind of skewed my thinking. Mm-hmm. And so my first 2 years of college, I was still in that realm. And at the time, because it was so long ago, it was a bachelor's degree when you were for your physical therapy licensing. And my sophomore year, I just was really unhappy. And I had an aunt who, I grew up in Pittsburgh, so I was at West Virginia University for my first 2 years. And I had an aunt who lived out in California. And she is still my absolute favorite aunt. And she said, come out to California, live with me. I found this other degree that I think you might like. And it was exercise physiology. Nice. Knew nothing about it. And I'm like, but I get to move to California. I'm there. Yeah. So I transferred out to a pretty small Christian college, actually. And I had some amazing professors. And I went from classes of 400 at West Virginia to classes of 12. And so I was really able to dive into what exercise physiology was. Mm-hmm. And when I was getting ready to graduate, I still wasn't 100% sure what I wanted to do. And so my professor at the time, Dr. Frank Frisch, he said, Jan, go on for your master's. And I said, okay, why not? Mm-hmm. So I went on for my master's. And during my master's, again, I had some really, really wonderful professors 2 in exercise physiology, and 2 in gerontology. And I fell in love with the older adult, working with the older adult.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I found my peeps, So I was getting ready to graduate, kind of didn't know what I wanted to do. And I was dating my now husband at the time, and he was going on for his PhD. And he said, go on for your PhD. And I went, okay, I'll go. What the heck? So he left a semester before me. I followed him a semester afterwards to the University of Kansas. And again, had fantastic instructors who really guided me into understanding academia, understanding the differences in our fields within kinesiology. Mm-hmm. And so then after that, I got a job when I was getting ready to graduate. I got a job at Cal State LA in their Kinesiology Department. And they had an interesting twist on exercise science. They had an applied track. And so they said, Jan, take this track and, try to improve it a little bit. So I was delving into the fitness industry. I didn't have a lot of confidence in myself with the fitness industry, but I knew I liked it because it was so applied as opposed to very laboratory or clinically driven, which a lot of exercise science programs are, which is definitely needed. It didn't fill my soul.
Yeah.
And so I was at Cal State LA for 3 years and traveling, oh my gosh, an hour plus to get to school because I lived down in Orange County, traveling up to the heart of LA. And, traffic is horrible. So a job opening opened up at Long Beach State. And I was so lucky to get the job. And they as well had this kind of unique twist, but theirs was a full degree in fitness. And when I started there, once again, I was told, Jan, you got to make this better because we have 12 students in the auction. Huh. And so I worked for 2 years because it takes a while for new curriculum to get in place at a university. Mm-hmm. And I developed our fitness bachelor's of science degree in fitness. And we rock, if I do say so myself. We're a very applied degree. We hit kind of all the pillars in the industry with personal training, corrective exercise, working with athletes, working with older adults, management. We hit all of those classes. So our students are quite prepared when they come out, as you can see from yourself. And when I was working at Cal State LA, or Cal State Long Beach, I started to get into group fitness, which for me was actually kind of funny, Tyler, because I was always so shy. Mm-hmm. And standing up in front of a group and basically a performance artist, Yep. And I don't know what happened, but I was like, this is what I'm down for. I found it. Exactly. So I still teach group exercise. I teach 4 classes a week. Mm-hmm. I have my own company that specializes in women who've transitioned through menopause and beyond. And we focus on group exercise and health education. Great. In a nutshell, with a lot of other side jobs along the way.
Well, that's the fitness industry these days. Uh-huh. And if the listeners didn't pick that up, Dr. Schroeder is the one that set me onto my path. There was an email that she forwarded out to all the students about an internship opportunity at a fitness education company called Nesta. I was the one that responded. And that is what set me on my path of developing fitness education online and all the things that other stops that I've had in the last, what's always crazy when I say how long I've been in the industry. But over the last, I got to do the math here, 13 years, you were the one that sparked it all for me. And talking today about fitness education, becoming a personal trainer, I think we got to put it out there for our listeners that we are two people that enjoy education, believe in it, invest in it. And despite what we invest in, the barrier or the entry for becoming a personal trainer is really just a piece of paper. It could be a weekend workshop. It could be a few weeks of studying online. And this is something that a lot of people wonder about. How do you become a personal trainer? Is it hard? And I think a good place to start is, how have you seen personally the evolution of fitness education to become a personal trainer over the last, we'll say 25, 30 years?
Yeah, I see it as like this up and down roller coaster that's occurred.
Yeah.
When I started in the industry, there were very few certifications. Because I'm that old, Tyler.
You've only said I have not agreed with it once. I just shake my head, but
Good man. So with it, when I started, there wasn't a lot. There were some,
yeah.
but they were so new that it wasn't a huge thing when I started out. And then, kind of in the 90s and then the 2000s, 2010s, even, it became that you must have a certification. You need it. You're not going to get a job without it.
Yeah.
And what I've noticed over the past several years, especially, I'm going to say since the pandemic, that certification is not held with such high regard anymore. I personally see value in it. I see value in a college education, but I think people can come about this to become a personal trainer in many different ways. Yeah, so I've seen it kind of come and go, talking about at one point having a national registry, and that really didn't go anywhere because other industries push back on us. And so it's one of those things that I think, I don't know where we're going to go in the future. I eventually think if something's going to change again, it's going to be due to lawsuits.
Oh, that's a good point there.
Yeah.
I do want to come back to that, but there is a question that popped up in my head first about what is the difference that you see for entry-level personal trainers that will have a degree? I know that that's somebody that might already have a CPT and they might be thinking, should I get a degree in this? What are some benefits that you could immediately just throw at them and say, hey, this is worth your time?
Yeah. I fully believe in higher education, or else I wouldn't be a professor. I mean, so you have to take what I'm saying through my lens. But I first of all, I don't think all degree programs are equal.
Agree.
I think you need to find a degree program that is practical in nature, because most degree programs are exercise science or kinesiology, and a lot of them are geared towards a clinical track. So they're preparing the student for physical therapy school, OT school, med school, the master's degree, the PhD. And that might not be the best degree program for somebody who wants to get into the industry. So my first thought is, if you're looking to get into more education in this area through higher education, you really need to find the right program for you.
That's a good point.
So that being said, what do you look for? You look for programs that are, you look at the classes, and do they have program design? Do they have motivational strategies? Do they have, the niche that you would like? If it's strength and conditioning, do they have a strength and conditioning track, or at least classes in that area? Or, are you more interested in corrective or post-rehab? Do they have classes in that area? Because I wouldn't want somebody to waste their time and not get what they need.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, anytime you go into a university setting, it's not always about what you learn right then and there, because what we have to teach you before you can actually learn is, how do you learn? How do you take the information in? How do you find information? How do you critically analyze information, as opposed to listening to an influencer on Instagram who is not providing scientific education?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you make a very good point with finding the right program and that preparation that goes with yourself, but over the years with it. And it's a great transition to what we're going to be talking about now with issues with personal trainer turnover, because in my opinion, a lot of the turnover that we see with new personal trainers has to do with readiness. Are they prepared to start training people on day one? And this has been an argument that I've had in a variety of different podcasts, and I've had some great guests over the last few months that work at, I will say, the top 5 or have worked at the top 5 educational companies. And they will all say about how your CPT is just your ticket into the industry. There is no elite certification, in my opinion. And that comes from having worked at some of the top companies and worked on these programs. And having taken some of these exams, I can tell you that there is no elite. It's all beginner education, but the readiness for it. That is the one that I'm going to circle for my reasoning has to do with it. But what are some other reasons that you would say contribute to personal trainer turnover?
I think a lot of people have the wrong idea of our industry. They get into the industry because they enjoy themselves working out.
Yeah.
They love it. And so they expect the people they work with to love it as well. And, maybe if you've had a client for 15 years, then they love it. But most people, I always tell my students, I'm like, we are not normal. We are the deviated side of normal because we do enjoy movement. We do enjoy being uncomfortable during movement. And so with teaching young professionals that they are not normal and they have to work with clients who they want to work out because they've engaged your services, but everything in their brain is saying, I need to go do the laundry instead of meet my trainer, and so that gets frustrating for the professional because they aren't understanding or they don't have the empathy to meet the client where they're at. I work with a lot of older adults, and I always laugh because what I think they should be doing is not necessarily what they want to do. And so I have to meet them kind of in the middle. And if I were to be the one that says, no, you need to do X, Y, and Z, you're going to lose your clients or you're going to be very frustrated with yourself.
Yeah.
With that client. So I honestly think that's a really big thing for entry-level professionals. I also think that they do not realize how much sales information they need to have in order to succeed. It's not something where you're just going to have clients flocking to you. As much as I wish that would happen, you spend a large percentage of your week marketing, doing outreach, trying to make sure your clients are seeing benefits from your programming so that they re-sign with you, and asking for the sale. That's really hard. And I get it because we don't want to be told no, or we don't want to be seen as pushy, but there's authentic ways to do it. But I think that's another really big reason that we see so much turnover, because people expect, I really have a lot of knowledge in my head, but if you can't explain that and you can't meet your client where they are, that's where I think you either don't get enough clients to sustain yourself, or you get frustrated with clients.
A quick break in this video. If you are needing CEUs, make sure that you head to the link that's in the description where you can find all our online courses that have pre-approvals with NASM, ISSA, ACE, AFA, NCSF, and with Nesta. We of course offer free content on our YouTube channel, but if you're needing professional ed, with some of them even having the full amount to recertify, make sure you head to that link. And now let's get back to the video. 100%. I just recorded a video yesterday, and in that video, I was talking about the personal trainer consultation, and I include phrases that have worked for me in the past because I think they're genuine phrases about thanking them for sharing information. When you are doing consultations, you have somebody in front of you that does not like exercise at all. Overwhelming majority do not like exercise, and yet they are sharing personal information with you that might have to do with sensitive topics. So being able to empathize with them, show that you appreciate their honesty during this first session with somebody that they just met, those are things that will go a long way with new clients. And so that part of it, empathizing and being able to communicate with your client, those are big things that come with reps, come with experience. And I think new trainers, they don't think that. They don't understand what avenues can help them with getting these repetitions. I know when I first entered the industry, I had no idea. I was still in school and I had my certification. I worked at a big gym and I didn't know which pathways to take. And I was trying to lean on a fitness manager and trying to figure out what leads were good. And so I could see why the turnover happens, the preparation for those things. Getting back to, though, I want to swing back to education. I want to make sure listeners know that I'm just not always slamming CPTs, and that I do sometimes have nice things to say about personal trainer education. What chapters would you say might be undervalued? We're talking about sales, and those are not as emphasized more, but there's other chapters in a CPT. In your opinion, what are some undervalued chapters?
I really, and this is, for me to say this is like, I kind of giggle in my head because I'm so, I was in clinical tracks. So, I want to talk about, how muscle fibers grow and how bone metabolism, and get super scientific. Clients don't want to hear that. It's pretty rare when I have a client that tells me, give me the physiology and the biomechanics, Yeah. But I think a lot of some of the under, I don't know what you want to call it, but
appreciated.
Underappreciated, overlooked is those soft skills. Yep. And and those are really hard to teach as well. I think they are. Some people say, oh, they're not teachable. I disagree. I think you can teach those, but it's uncomfortable because it is a lot of role playing. And I personally hate role playing. But I also realize the value of it. But, things such as motivational interviewing, understanding how behavior changes. And we don't all progress the same exact pathway through behavioral change. I think those things are really take you from being a knowledgeable personal trainer to an exceptional personal trainer.
Agreed.
And being able to have those personal connections with individuals, with people. And I'm going to say this, but I'm not bashing young professionals, but they had unique experiences where during some of their formative years, COVID happened. And they lost out on learning about conflict resolution, learning about socialization. And, the phone comes into play and everything's on Instagram and all that. And I don't mean that in a negative way. All I'm saying is that that group of young professionals, they are going to have to work a little bit harder in order to establish those skills. And I I always laugh with people. They go, "Oh, kids these days," and I'm like, "Yeah, kids these days.
Yeah.
They rock. I mean, they are awesome." And I love working with students because I see the passion, and I see they want to succeed. And we need to provide them either in an educational setting or in a mentorship setting. We need to provide them with those skills so that we can keep bringing young professionals into our industry.
Agree. Just quickly on the soft skills, that was a piece of advice that was given to me very early on with active listening and the importance of it. And that is something that I had to work on every single day with a client or a new client, potential client. And it is something that I contribute today to my success within the fitness industry, just being able to just listen and not be the person that has to one up somebody, that you just listen, keep them talking and engage with them more. And that means a lot to clients. I think something that was said to me early on was about how some clients, they might not be there to train. They might be there to talk. And you might feel like a therapist sometime, and that's okay. If they need that in their lives and you are that person for them and they keep coming back, signing up for more sessions, there's nothing wrong with that in my opinion. And
no, I agree. And it's, I always say if I'm the unlicensed therapist, I'm still sneaking in some movement and improving their health.
100%. Yeah, 100%. And I think you mentioned something interesting that I want to go off more with newer generations of professionals in our industry. Now, this is not a podcast about COVID, the pandemic. We're talking about things that have shaped how things have changed after it. I think the industry really started to rethink some of their models after having to go through a change. And something that I've thought about a few times is online coaching and its impact for new trainers. I will say immediately that I think online coaching can be a great viable option for professionals because now you're opening your market up, not just at one gym, but now you are looking across the country to potentially work with individuals. And I will say newer professionals, younger generations have skills with marketing, social media that can benefit them. And I think those are very handy. How do you think online coaching fits into new professionals and what they can potentially offer?
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. And I personally never would have done it unless the pandemic happened.
Yeah.
And, I actually have clients all over the country, and I love now that I get to train my 85-year-old mom.
Yeah.
Because we live across the country from each other. She lives in, I'm not going to say a rural area, but compared to where I live, it's rural. So she gets to have the big gyms, and she works out every single day with me, is what she tells me. And to me, it's fantastic because we get to reach more people, especially people who may not feel comfortable in a gym. They may not have the means to go pay for a membership and then personal training on top of it. I think it's a wonderful, wonderful avenue. Now, I personally like having in person and online, but I can see the benefit of having most of your clients online. And as you said, those younger professionals, they are so much more tech savvy that I think it's a natural fit. And I think that was a really big positive for our industry that with that coming out of it and really, slamming it in our face on, hey, here is a new revenue stream that you might never have thought of. And
Agreed.
I love it. I love being able to work out with my mom.
Agree. And for the clients out there, not only have they seen that this is a viable option, could be efficient for them to be exercising at home. But I will also say for the professionals that might be on the fence about it, or maybe you're new listening to this and thinking, what does this do for my career? One, puts money in your pocket, but two, I think it sharpens your skill set as a trainer. For myself, I do record online workouts for my YouTube channel. And I have noticed from going from online to in person that it feels like I never skipped a beat. When I used to take breaks from training in person, I would feel like I needed a week or two to get back into that rhythm, how you're cueing, what you normally say. There'd be days in the past where I'd take these breaks and I'd be like, that's not how I say that. Why did I fumble through that? And I'm out of rhythm. I'm out of sync with it. I think online coaching gives you that opportunity to use the language that your clients will help them and get into different positions. It keeps them sharp. So I think it is a viable option. I've said that before in different podcasts, and I think it's great. So we're going to move here to a rather new thing that I've been doing in the podcast. I call them little quick hits, just to be your initial reactions to some statements, and you can take these however you want. Okay?
Okay, let's do it.
Experienced personal trainers need a current CPT certification.
I want to say yes and no. I have a PhD and I still hold 3 certifications. I just feel as though it shows your client that you are invested in the industry. It also requires you to do continuing education.
Yeah.
And so it requires you to continue your professional development. As an experienced trainer, I think that's the value that it brings. That it shows your development as a professional. I don't think it is a requirement, but people understand certifications anymore. And so I think it just gives you that little bit of credibility that goes above and beyond what your education and experience level is.
Let me give you where I found or what inspired that statement there. And in preparation for this episode, I was skimming through Reddit and looking for ideas for topics, questions, that kind of things. What are people interested in? And somebody had mentioned, I have a master's in, I think it was either exercise science or kinesiology. And I am looking to work at a gym and I need to get a certification. Which one should I get? And there are a plethora of responses on there. And my suggestion, and I think I put it on there, was that I think you should get the cheapest one that your gym requires. And that is because your gym, as long as they accept it, that's great. But at the same time, it's not going to further your education. If you have a master's in kinesiology or exercise science, you're good. You don't need to study for that. You're good. Just go sit down and take it. That's my opinion on that.
And the only certification that I would say that you must maintain is if you're a strength and conditioning coach at a university, because then you have to be CSCS. But other than that, I agree. I don't think there is one that is better than the other. I have actually done consulting work for every single one of those organizations, like you said, the big 5, and I find them all to be good. And so, if you have the education behind you, and especially if you have the experience, get whatever it is and do not let it go. So you never have to do it again.
I will admit that I let mine go in 2016 and have not, but that's a different story, different podcast. But next statement here, and this is good because I did want to talk about this at some point. Personal training schools produce the best route to success for a new personal trainer, like a vocational school.
No. I think it's one avenue.
Yeah.
But I don't think it produces the best, because I really do think it is how people learn.
Yeah.
There are some people who learn on their own extremely well. And so why should they have to go the route of a vocational school in order to move forward? having a mentor can also be another way. Having a formal education can be another way. And I think it really depends on the individual. I would love to say everybody should have a degree, but it's not reasonable, especially for people who are re-entering or entering the workforce late in life. They learn differently, and the vocational school might be a great way for them to go to get that base knowledge.
Yeah.
But that's all those are, is base knowledge. So I think that's fantastic for it. But once you have that base knowledge, now you got to go do some other types of education to expand and refine your skills.
Yeah. I would say that if I could give a best route, which is a fictitious statement in my opinion, but if you have a degree and you have that opportunity to work at a higher tier gym, and that's why I prefaced it by saying it's fictional, but also you would have to have a degree to potentially even get an interview at, say, like an Equinox or a Lifetime Fitness, because in my opinion, they're probably not going to take somebody that just got a fresh certification. They probably want some experience under your belt. But those type of higher tier gyms have the training that they're going to put you through to make sure you get the reps, to learn how to be a personal trainer, get the sales reps, and making sure that you are fundamentally sound to work with clients. That, in my opinion, really sets people up for success. I've met a lot of great trainers over the years that have worked for some of those brands, and they did have a degree, but they also had that training, that system in place for whenever they left those gyms, they were still making great money and in this industries. But like I said, that is just one route. And I think you were spot on that people learn differently. You got to find what works for you. Last one here. And I think you already answered it, but that's okay. I'm going to ask it again.
Okay.
There's a best personal trainer certification.
No, absolutely not. And again, I think it depends on the route you want to go. If you like the more clinical route, maybe ACSM works for you. If you like a general route, maybe ACE, their personal trainer certificate works for you. If you want to work with with athletes, strength CSCS and a CACSCS. If you want more of a rehab, I think you need to look to what it is that's your passion. I'm never going to sit for the CSCS. Don't want to work with athletes, but so I don't think there is one best one. I think they all serve their purpose.
That's good. I think that's a unique perspective on it, because I think it's a lot of marketing, and that's my opinion on it. But I think there's a lot of marketing on it, and actually diving deeper into it in terms of what's involved with it, looking at the exam candidate handbook of each certification to see what chapters and what they go in depth on is a great piece of advice that anybody listening can go through. So very different than previous guests, and I like that. It provides variety for the podcast. We're getting now to the podcast takeaways, as this episode has flown by, and I think there's been a lot of great things in here about education for personal training, different routes, and understanding that you might learn differently than other people out there. Great topics, great advice for the listeners. So last question here. What are 3 myths about becoming a personal trainer?
I think one myth is that you have to be extremely in shape.
That's a good one.
Extremely fit, because you don't. Some clients will be extremely intimidated by somebody who is very in shape.
Yeah.
So I think our industry, it fits all bodies. I think our industry fits all personalities, all ages. And so because I've talked with some students and they're like, I don't look like a personal trainer. I'm like, well, what's a personal trainer supposed to look like?
Yeah.
And they're like, well, really cut and defined. I'm like, I don't want to go to somebody like that. If I'm 70 years old, I'm afraid they'd hurt me. You know,
Yeah.
but so I think that's a myth.
Mm-hmm.
I also think it's a myth that we don't have to do sales. Our clients are just going to flock to us. We're so wonderful, which we are. We're an amazing group of people. But we have to understand our sales techniques.
Yeah.
And one sales technique does not work for each person. You have to find your organic sales technique. And then the third one, I don't know. I'm not sure on that one.
I will give a third because you did great on everything else and want to help out. And it expands on your first one about not everybody needs to be an extrovert. I think that you could have any type of personality, to be honest, despite how it might seem on this podcast. My wife would probably consider me an introvert, and it's because I enjoy time by myself. And there are a variety of personalities in this industry. It just depends on what you want to showcase for your clients. But when you go home, you can do whatever you want and you can be whoever you want. And that doesn't matter. You could be whoever you want. That's the point I want to make there. You don't have to be an extrovert. You don't have to be extra fun. Clients look for different things in different trainers. So that'll be our third one right there.
Okay.
Before we sign off here, can you give information about social media for yourself and any upcoming events?
Yeah, so I'm super excited about Ideal World Fitness Convention. This year it is in Sacramento. So it's in the smaller city, the state capital for California. It is July 17, 18, 19. I had to think about that for a second. And we have a lot of great education coming. Tyler, you're going to be there to present.
I will be there.
Yeah. And so I'm super excited about that. And I'm sure I can get you
we will have
link.
Information about that in the description. That's the easy way to say it.
There we go. So super excited about that event. I feel as though in-person conventions are coming back. And people want that networking and they want to learn in person and just feel the energy of other fitness professionals. And if you've never been to an in-person conference, I am sold on them. I come away exhausted, but my soul is filled and I have all these new ideas that I can implement with my clients. So really excited about that event.
And I will say this, and this is not my words, but it was a great point made on a previous podcast. I think it was Pat Rigsby who came on my podcast and he talked about how conventions used to be the way to get really high-end education in one weekend. And I think that over the years, and it could be due to the convenience of things, online education, there's a lot of great online education out there, but conventions offer that opportunity for a lot of education packed in one weekend and the opportunity for CEUs. And if you live in that area, the ability to network, if you're listening to this, you live in Sacramento or in an area close by, to go to the event, it is a great networking opportunity. I can tell you that I walk away with business cards. I talk with different people to make content with, whatever that might be that I'm looking for. Go there for whatever reason you want to check off. But that is something I do want to include as a promotion for Ideal World coming up. Not just because I'm going to be there, but somebody might take some benefit from that. I want to say again, thank you for coming on the podcast. The second time here, a lot of great information, and it's always a pleasure to speak with you.
Yeah, it's so good to see you, Tyler, and you make me so proud.
Thank you.